And now you can join in the civil discourse on the question of whether Islam is dominated by radicals. We have microphones out in the audience, and if you'd like to, I guess, raise your hand, the people bearing the microphones will find you. Yes, question.
My name is James Toronto, and I am a member of the press.
Good.
I'm with the Wall Street Journal. This question is for any or all on the side for the motion. To what extent or on the whole, let's say, have the political changes in Iraq over the past 5 years strengthened or weakened the domination of Islam by radicals?
This is David Gartenstein-Ross. You want to answer that?
Okay, sure. I think that the changes in Iraq have had both effects. On the one hand, I think the Iraq War has clearly been a rallying point for radicals, and whether that's justifiable or unjustifiable is something that people can decide on their own. But clearly, it's been a great recruiting ground for al-Qaeda and others. The flip side of that is that we had some discussion before of the anti-jihadist movements that are there, things like the Sahwa movement, and those have had a cognizably good impact. I think on the whole, the fighting there is something that is energizing of radicals in the Muslim world without a question, and that's not going to stop regardless of the Sahwa movement.
Where is our next question coming from? On the right.
Islam is dominated by radicals has a multitude of meanings, not just political. And I was very moved at what Ms. Nomani said, talking about how women were treated in this religion. And I don't know, obviously, I'm not an expert on the Muslim religion, but I do know several women in New York who go to mosques and are placed in separate areas, who cannot go out with a man or be seen with a man without a chaperone, and any union has to be validated by the head of the mosque. I think, and this my question is to Edina. What do you think of the absolute bare bones question of, as I say, microcosms grow into macrocosms, of bare bones questions of human rights in that issue?
Okay, when it comes to the issue of women in mosques, what we see, I can speak again anecdotally and I can speak empirically. It's a matter of what the audience would like to hear. When it comes to anecdotal things, you said something about the union of marriages. In any church, the union of two people must be sanctified by that religious institution. On the question of chaperones, it in many ways is a product of culture than of religion. There is what has been practiced by my family for generations is what is then being practiced. I think this question of religion and culture and the weaving of the two is one of the central questions that we face within the global Muslim community today. And the reality is that Islam looks and feels and tastes different no matter where you go, regardless of who is in power, because of the question of culture and of identity that we are considering here. Is there a very real,
including on the subject, including the rights of women?
Is there a very real problem when it comes to the treatment of women in mosques and in human rights issues? Absolutely. Is it the dominant force for Muslim women and their lives? I would argue with that point, because based again on my travels, on my experience, and on my interaction with the data that's out there, there are just as many women who are, when they have an education, when they have access, and that's, again, we have dividing lines. We can't separate the question of human rights when there is a lack of education, where there is poverty, where there are these surrounding issues. It is not simply a matter of religious teachings, because you have the Benazir Bhuttos, you have the women heads of state in Bangladesh and Pakistan and Indonesia and other places. You have Queen Noor of Jordan and Queen Rania. You have these other examples that exist out there, and they are just as much role models for Muslim women as are the problems that they are facing. These are two sides of the same reality, but absolutely, there's a very real problem on the ground, and it's one that is being faced by NGOs, by civil society groups, and by women themselves on the ground. And that's what I'm really trying to put the attention on here, is that there is an active fight taking place on the ground. An active fight.
And there has to be a fight, because there has to be a fight. I want to just make the point
Asra
again.
Nomani.
There has to be a fight because the leadership is dominated by radicalism.
And by patriarchy.
Yes, patriarchy is a form of radicalism,
As it
if
is
you
in other
ask
parts
me.
of the-
Sure,
of the non-Muslim
but,
world.
Right, but unfortunately, our society, our Muslim society, is defined right now by a patriarchy that the Christian and Jewish societies have evolved beyond.
You're confused.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't just get censored in Dubai because I wanted to talk about women's rights. Oh, I'm sorry. The mosque up the street didn't tell me that I couldn't pray in the main hall because that's not what a woman's supposed to do. Oh, I'm sorry. Those men that surrounded me.
Orthodox
excuse me.
synagogues separate.
Orthodox
Reza.
synagogues are a portion.
Catholic churches,
excuse
women
me,
can't become
they're
priests,
a
they can't
portion
serve,
of,
you know.
They're a portion of the Jewish community. But at
Sure,
the end of the
I'm just saying
day,
patriarchy is everywhere.
Orthodox ideology is what defines our communities. 2 out of 3 mosques in America do not even allow a woman on the board. That is a statistic. And that
From where? Whose
that
statistic is that? It's
that
very
is the
easy to throw these things out there.
Council on American Islamic Relations, who are consider themselves the NAACP of the Muslim world, fighting for women's rights. I mean, this is the reality. We can talk politics, we can talk all sorts of, dictatorships. Ultimately, we're dealing with bullies in the community who want to push their radical ideology.
And you
into
reinforce
our
those
Asra Nomani, though, it
bullies
would
by
be, one could
accepting their
infer from what you've said that at the start of the last century, that all of Western civilization was
Right.
dominated by extremists.
And have we not gotten at least some movement where we have churches now, where we have women as priests, where we have Catholic women who
And they're
are
still
fighting for the
They're
protest?
fighting.
We have mosques
They
where
have-
women
they
are
are-
imams.
Oh,
so, I mean,
really?
Very
I'd
small
love to go
percentage.
to them in China, in some rural areas. Oh, I'll take a trip there,
No,
but
no,
I
in
don't
the
think.
United States.
Oh, really, Reza? Tell me where I could go.
Absolutely. The
Uh-huh.
Zaytuna Institute, the only seminary
Right.
in the United States,
Right.
trains as many women
Right.
imams as
women
it
imams
trains
to teach
male
the
imams.
women, because they're acceptable for the sisters. But at the end of the day, they're not good enough for the men,
Another
and that to me is unacceptable.